On today's episode of First Light, we're joined by someone who's not just been ahead of the curve in digital marketing, he's been helping law firms build the curve. Jay Berkowitz is the founder and CEO of 10 Golden Rules, a digital marketing powerhouse that's helped countless legal professionals grow their practices with purpose and precision. With over 25 years of experience, from Fortune 500 boardrooms to the forefront of internet marketing strategy, Jay has done it all. He's a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and the voice behind the Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Let's dive in. All right, Jay, I got to attend your 10 Golden Rules Summit this year, and I have to say to all the attorneys out there, and frankly, non-attorneys in some ways, the business owners out there who are in the South Florida area, or frankly in Florida for that matter, who didn't travel to Delray to attend your summit, man, they missed out. For me, it was a mind-blowing experience to get to witness your summit. Truly thought you guys did an absolutely amazing job, and after that, I couldn't wait to have you on the podcast. So
thank you.
I'm excited to share your story today. I know you worked with big brands like Coca-Cola and McDonald's, and then kind of pivoted and founded your own agency. So, kind of what inspired you to go through that transition?
Well, the story's really simple, actually. I worked for Coca-Cola and McDonald's, as you said, and got into technology working for Sprint. And it was the very early days, getting some people their first website, getting consumers their first email. And then I got a job opportunity to actually come to America. All of that work was in Canada. And I was sponsored down here, so thank you to ediets.com. And I came down to a startup.com. And we were one of the top 5 largest advertisers in the world online at that time. We were running banner ads on MSN, AOL, and Yahoo in the very early days. Google was still in beta. Mark Zuckerberg was in high school. And the way you did internet marketing ad was you did banner ads. And so I took on this director of marketing role and we started doing a new series of banners every week and really modernizing the whole doing a direct marketing campaign in an internet marketing company. And we got really, really good at it. And we grew the company to $60 million in revenue. And I was asked to speak at the Direct Marketing Association. And I wrote a presentation called The 10 Golden Rules of Online Marketing to share, now I had 5 years of digital marketing experience in 2003. And most people were still just discovering Google as a consumer. And so I wrote this book and this presentation. And 5 or 6 people came running up to me at the end and said, "We've got to hire you as a consultant. We hear this Google thing is going to be big." So that's how I got into, really starting my agency as a consultant. And then we became a full-fledged digital agency.
I want to talk to you so much because you've done so much in business and been through so much. But, I've gotten to, after getting to know you, I got to know your company a little bit and how you run your company. I want to talk about that because it was impressive for me. And I know we share a lot of the principles. So talk about like building your company, those early years of like stepping out into entrepreneurship, the challenges that you faced, and then how you overcame those challenges. And then eventually now how you got to where you are and running the company that you run.
Well, I think I was lucky because I solved sales before I started the company. I did a presentation, talked to people about internet marketing in the very early days. Everybody loved it, wanted to work with me. So I got on as many stages as I could. And that sales methodology stood me in great stead to this day. We've been at conferences together, and I speak at conferences now, speaking directly to lawyers. And the same result. I was just speaking at PILMA, the Personal Injury Lawyers Mastermind in Denver a couple weeks ago, and about 35 people came to our booth after the presentation and signed up for a free consultation and a meeting. So fortunately, the sales part has been pretty steady in that regard.
But the business side of it.
Yeah, the business side, you have to learn. And I often refer people when they're starting out to the book E-Myth. And I was very lucky to read E-Myth. And E-Myth is really the entrepreneur's myth that, some people are really good plumbers or really good marketers or really good lawyers, and then they decide, I'm going to open my own shop. And they don't realize that, all the other seats at the management table, they don't have as much experience in accounting, they don't have as much experience in sales, they don't have as much experience in finance, leadership, management. So I read E-Myth and at least had some of the basics covered. And as we built the company, we started using E-Myth methodology where everything got a checklist, everything had an SOP, standard operating procedure. And as we really have continued to use that methodology where everything we do, if we find a better way to do it, we'll rewrite the standard operating procedures. And that's become kind of our secret sauce, that we've got 23 years of trial and error. We've got 23 years of best practices. So we've continually honed the better way to do it, And we feel we've gotten pretty good at it.
But one thing you said that I think is so true still is that the traditional way of marketing, getting yourself up on stage, getting yourself in front of crowds, speaking, going out and meeting people face to face, shaking hands, the kind of the grassroots, back to the basics, is still so important today, right? I don't think it's changed, but we are in this crazy digital age, and I know you've talked about, kind of the golden age of digital marketing, and so kind of talk about what you mean by the golden age of digital marketing and why this moment is kind of unique to us.
Well, I think the unique moment is AI, and artificial intelligence has now really been integrated into search. And I think Google was dragged kicking and screaming a little quicker than they wanted to by ChatGPT. But I think as many as 10% of searches now are done on ChatGPT. So that's really a game changer, because Google's held 90% of the market for a long time, and Yahoo and Bing probably still has 5 or 6, 7%. But ChatGPT is really encroaching on their territory. So Google introduced their artificial, they call it AI overviews, search results. So basically when you ask a question now, Google will comprise an answer. But the cool thing for us as marketers is they'll show you the 2 or 3 websites that they use to compile that answer. So there is another search opportunity where Google's showing the website, showing the link. So you can get links if people want more information after the AI overviews answer. But what's really happened, and we've been seeing this in the last 3 to 6 months, since Google is showing those results about 30% of the time now, 30% of search has been upset. They've upset the apple cart. So sometimes people are, using those AI overviews, getting their answer and not digging any deeper. Sometimes they're using that instead of a local service ad, instead of a PPC ad, instead of a Google Maps, instead of an SEO. So the game's changed, and every time the game's changed, it's up to us as marketers and your agency to figure it out, get ahead of the game. It's what I call golden rule number 10, lead the trends. And lead the trends suggests that there's an opportunity when things change, when there's something new, if you can figure it out before your competitors, you don't have to nail it, but you just have to be ahead of the curve. And let's say these 30% of searches are now thrown up in the air. And if you can figure out quickly how to take advantage of those, you're going to have a 6-month window until everybody figures it out. So we feel like we've got it kind of figured out, and we feel like we're getting our clients a share of those opportunities.
So how, in your company, how do you guys kind of see this trend coming? How do you guys then go and react to it? I think a lot of times in businesses that one of the hardest things is being proactive. A lot of times we're reactive. We wait. I talked about it recently. Where I see the digital age going is, a lot of law firms in town or a lot of businesses in town, no matter what, especially law firms. It's very true to law firms, our industry. They're 10 years behind the rest. And so it's like they see all these billboards go up for, personal injury attorneys. Well, I'm never doing that. And then 10 years later, like, why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
And so lawyers are kind of slow to react. And so it's very reactive. How are you guys at your company proactive and seeing some of these trends and getting out in front to really put your clients in the best position?
Well, I think there's 2 things that have worked well for me. One is I call it Jay's rule of 3. And the first time you hear about something, you maybe check it out. The second time, okay, people are talking about it. Maybe you hear about something on a podcast. It's like, okay, I better figure this out because I had now heard about it 3 times. So, I'll jump in and do some research or assign someone on the team to do some research. And I think, it's inherent on every company today to have an innovation mindset. And so we have a rule of 10 golden rules, or actually it's one of our EOS core principles, that we introduce one new product every quarter. So that could be a new type of video we'll test and launch with maybe ourselves or 2 or 3 clients. And if it works well, we'll roll it out to 6 or 10 clients. A new technology. So Q1 this year, we rolled out a new reporting platform. Q2 this year, we're rolling out a product called TGR Boomerang, which is when a lead comes into your website, When people fill out the form on the website, there's a big problem because most people get that delivered by email. And if someone doesn't check their email for 3 or 4 hours, that lead's been sitting dormant for 3 or 4 hours. You might as well forget about it. And also a lead that if someone fills out a form, it's really hard to get those people to pick up the phone. So when they fill out the form on the website, TGR Boomerang, like the Australian toy that you throw it out and it comes back, now that lead immediately gets cycled directly to the intake team who can call that person back. And similarly, if somebody misses a phone call, and a lot of people hang up, and Google calls that a missed phone call, but they heard the Google recording on an LSA and they hang up, or the call rail recording. And now when they hang up, you can still capture that phone number, and TGR Boomerang fires that lead over to the intake team by text. They can immediately call that person back. So introducing technology and using technology and taking advantage of all these new AI tools today, I think it's inherent on every business to, don't do everything, wait for the rule of threes, but, have a nice structured program. Like every month we're going to test something, or every quarter we're going to roll out a new product, and that helps you get to market. If you make the right decisions, you get the right products to market.
I want to talk about the TGR Boomerang. I know this is something that you've innovated, that you developed. So talk about now developing your own kind of software, your own program platform.
Yeah. Look, part of it is you don't have to do it all in-house. So a lot of times we'll find an expert. We might get someone to do a lot of the programming, which we did in this case. We pick a project manager internally and assembled actually a little team. So there's a strategist, an account manager, and one of our reporting people. And they're working with an outside coder to get the code built. And now we have a platform we can roll to different clients.
It's amazing. Truly being innovative and doing it all. Let's talk some more about AI. I know that's one of the kind of biggest opportunities, the hot topic issue. But what is kind of the biggest opportunity and also kind of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing out there? And I don't want to limit it to law firms. I know most of your clients, or the majority of your clients, is law firms. But with your knowledge, across the kind of the spectrum, what are you seeing?
Well, my two areas of expertise are what we do for ourselves and what we do for law firms, and mostly personal injury. But look, the biggest mistake, we kind of talked about it, is putting your head in the sand. And I think there's so many great tools. And there's literally hundreds and hundreds of companies now that have solutions for law firms for AI. So you've got to be selective and ask around. And, you're in a mastermind, I'm in a mastermind, super powerful. Use the rule of three. And if, 3 different people are using, intaker AI chatbots, it's probably inherent upon you to give it a test. So, make a short list, try and figure out 2 or 3 things. And get them into some kind of skunk works where you can test them out a little bit.
I want to talk to you about your leadership, because obviously CEO of your business, author, speaker, coach. So how do you kind of define leadership in your organization, and how has that evolved for you kind of over the years?
Well, I guess a lot of my leadership is just a team approach, because I played a lot of team sports. I'm Canadian, of course. I played hockey, but I was always, big team guy. And so, a lot of our culture is more of a team approach. And I did do some coaching, coaching kids when I started coaching my sister's soccer team and stuff like that. So I had a decent amount of experience coaching. So I guess I probably had a more jocular approach to management. And then I read the book Traction about 10 years ago, like many of us did. Of course, couldn't get through it because I'm the visionary, and Traction is actually written for the integrator, for those of you who know EOS. And if you don't, you owe it to yourself to at least do a chat GPT and say, give me a 500-word summary of the book Traction and the EOS operating system, because I think 400,000 companies are now using the EOS operating system, and we both are. So then I was able to read the book Get a Grip. And the book Get a Grip is told in a case study format. And as a parable, it's easier for the simpler mind, the visionary, to understand it. And then I went and read Traction again, folded corners, highlighted, took notes, and said, oh my God, this is going to change my business. We spent about a year doing self-implementation intentionally. with a goal to get the company to the stage where we really had a leadership team. So that ideally you want to be 10 plus people, and then you've got people managing people. And so in January of 2024, we got an implementer, one of the best in the world, Gerardo Escalona from The Profit Recipe. I recommend those guys in their book and their social media. They've got great EOS content. And Gerardo led us through the full-fledged implementation. So now I love the fact that it's not on my shoulders anymore. We have a leadership team. We have what's called an L10 meeting every week. Everybody's stepped up and taken tremendous responsibility and leadership roles for their departments. And now for the first time in 23 years, I don't feel like the weight of the company's all on my shoulders. I've got an amazing team, and with that, we've had incredible growth and success.
Yeah, talking about it from the standpoint of just the presentation that you made to my firm, how you bring your whole team in and you have this team. Talk about the importance of kind of how you make your pitches, how you go out and sell now. I mean, it's different these days.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story quickly.
Yeah, please.
Because I went to see a guy, and he was in the business of improving healthcare operations. And so I did what I do, and we do a lot of research. And so I showed him how his website ranked and how he ranked in Google Maps and how he was scoring on some different online metrics. And he just couldn't believe it. He said, "This is genius." And we were in a networking mastermind together, and he went to the room. He said, the Berkowitz method is genius. And he said, "I'm going to use this." And he started doing it. When he went in to see medical clinics, he would show them their health grades and their ratings and their Google Maps. And then he would help them improve everything. And his business skyrocketed using this methodology. So essentially that's what we do is we look at all of the tools we can to look at your business from the outside in. And we look at where you're ranking versus your competitors, how your Google Maps is ranking. If you're doing some pay-per-click, there's some tools which can show us, a broad guesstimate on how much you're spending, but more importantly, the keywords you're bidding on, the ads you're running, the landing pages you're using. So we can very clearly see from the outside in how you're performing in SEO, Google Maps, local service ads, pay-per-click, and give you some real valuable feedback in even our first meeting of here's your biggest areas of opportunity for improvement.
One thing that I think has kind of been interesting is people are like, well, I'm going to bring all my marketing in-house. And then other people are like, no, I'm using it outside. And there's always this kind of debate of whether I should do it or somebody else should do it. Obviously, you have your own business doing it. Talk about the pros and cons or why someone might want to do it at one size and maybe not at another.
I think there's only one reason you should bring your marketing in-house, and that's if you can find a unicorn. And to my knowledge, they don't exist. But what I mean by that, particularly for a smaller firm who's going to hire one person, if even if you could hire Jay Berkowitz, who's supposed to be an expert on this stuff, I got to be honest, like I'm not an expert anymore at Google Ads and SEO and social media and all the formatting you need for posting social media and YouTube and local service ads. And the beauty of our business today is we do have an expert in each of those areas. I've got 2 or 3 guys who are in Google pay-per-click every day managing campaigns. I've got, my 3 or 4 strategists trying to figure out what Google's up to and hacking that Google algorithm and overseeing the copywriting and the SEO and the architectural work on websites. And we've got one of the world's leading experts on local service ads. So the benefit of an agency, in my opinion, is that one firm doesn't have the ability to hire one person who's really good at all these things. And what we bring to the party is we're looking at about 100 locations across the country for your SEO, Google Maps, LSAs. We can see trends. We can test things. Like I mentioned, we're rolling 2 or 3 tests into a market every quarter. So when something works, we'll roll it out to 8 or 10 clients. We'll roll it out to 30 or 40 clients. And if your marketer doesn't have any perspective to figure out what's happening with LSAs, God bless them, but they're kind of stuck in the dark.
I want to talk to you about, obviously, in business, a lot of times we want to try to be everything for everybody. And I think you kind of niched down, you found your niche, and you guys are crushing there. So talk about the importance of, number one, how did you make that decision to niche down? Yeah. Why did you make that decision to niche down and kind of lead us through that?
Another story I love sharing because niching down's been great for us. And I like to say I got a God wink. I didn't know it at the time, but I met a guy and he had an agency and he was having tremendous success. And he only worked with franchises. And I said, how do you possibly do that? Like, I sell to all 200 SIC codes and you only sell to one. He said, well, we got in with some franchises and we got 7 or 8 locations. And then I got in with Orange Theory and I had 60 Orange Theories, and his agency grew very, very quickly. And he figured out how to work within the franchise systems. Then I met these guys who built a company called eBuilder. It's one of the biggest success stories in South Florida. They sold the company for $360 million. And they said their success came when they niched down and they had construction management software for only the hospitality industry. And there was only 300 companies that they needed to sell to. Their sales team could focus. There was 2 big conferences every year they needed to be at. And once they were focused, they skyrocketed and had a tremendous exit. And then I went to my mastermind, which is called 7-Figure Agency. And it's like a mastermind just for digital agencies. And there was all these guys who were super focused on just roofers, just plumbers, just, dentists. And everybody was doing incredibly well and sharing their best practices with each other because they weren't competitive. And I looked up and I said, okay, I get it, because 3 times God had to hammer me over the head to say pick a niche. So we had 2 really big niches in our agency at that time. We were doing a lot of very fun work in seminars and events with the Tony Robbins events and Shark Tank guys and house flipping. And we had a lot of lawyers. We'd gotten very good at doing lawyer marketing. But the difference between the lawyers and the events guys, the lawyers were business people and generally they paid their bills on time. The events guys, if they had a great show, we'd get paid. And if not, they'd kind of roll out of town and leave a few bills unpaid. And, fortunately, we were a priority because we were selling a lot of seats for them. But we really decided to pick the one niche. And they say there's riches in the niches, and we've probably tripled the size of our company since we did that.
And it's impressive, and it's so important to learn that. And talking about that too, I want to talk about kind of the mindset that you've seen. You've helped solo law firm owners, and you've worked with multi-million-dollar firms. Yeah. You work with the $1 million firm, the $10 million firm, and $10 million plus. What was that? What's the biggest difference you see in the mindset or of the $1 million and the $10 million?
I don't know if it's as much about the size of the firm, but there's a few things that I've uncovered that make someone successful. And one of them is, you've got to treat our relationship like a business relationship, because we bring a lot of value to the table, but we show up for our meetings prepared. We've got, a whole reporting system. We've got an agenda. We've got a Google Slides or a PowerPoint, for every meeting. And a lot of times the lawyers will show up 10, 15 minutes late for a half an hour meeting, and they're selling themselves short. Another thing that I find is you have to have a mindset to trust us a little bit. So if we tell you, hey, we haven't tried this, or we tried it on ourselves, like I put the Intaker chatbot on my website about 3 years ago, and then we rolled it to 2 or 3 lawyers. Well, we had tremendous success out of the gate. So then everybody else, we said, look, this is going to increase your leads 10 or 20%. You got to trust us. And the ones who have that mindset, the ones who think the guy who thinks he's smarter than everybody else in the room generally doesn't have a lot of success with us, and generally, flounders as a company. So you have to run your business like a business. The people who have an operating system, whether it's EOS or scaling up, or it could be any operating system, or even just run your business like a business, track your numbers, have leadership meetings, have meetings. Those guys are going to have success, and those guys are the guys who we and gals, as a matter of fact, who have tremendous success with us.
One thing, you run a marketing firm and you market, but you have to market for your marketing firm. You have to go out and get leads to build your business. Yeah. And I love all the things that you've done. Let's talk about the process of actually writing your first book. I know you have another book coming out, so talk about the importance of or the benefit of writing a book, kind of how you went through that process, and now where it's at, and what's next, what the next book.
Yeah, I wrote the first book. I don't know how I did it, because I had a full-time job at a .com that was screaming busy, and we worked 6 days a week. So I guess I wrote it on Sundays. And I work in a modular format. So I wrote 10 Golden Rules, and I sort of worked it out as a presentation. And I guess I wrote the book after having given the presentation 30 or 40 times. So I'd kind of I'd worked out the communication to an audience, which was very helpful. Because, when you're on stage and you're explaining a concept, and if you're getting those looks like people don't get it, then the next time you explain it a little differently. So I think the first book was hard-earned from stages and built off the 10 Golden Rules of Online Marketing presentation. Another trick that I like to share with folks, you can write your first book really, really easily. And what I say is one of the most powerful things you can do is answer questions. And we talk a lot about that in our agency. Some of the best SEO content today is answering questions, because that's going to show up in those AI overviews. It's going to show up in the people also ask questions. And we're getting tremendous traffic from those question and answers, because people ask questions in search today, literally on Siri or Alexa, or figuratively they type it into ChatGPT or Google. So one of the simplest things you can do is write down the 10 or 15 questions you get asked most frequently. That becomes the table of contents for your new book. And then each of those becomes a blog post, becomes a chapter of your ebook. And I've dozens and dozens of people have taken me up on this suggestion. And you basically write a blog every week for 10 weeks, then go to Fiverr, which is a great online site for $5 or for $20. Someone will compile it into a PDF for you. And you can make it a free ebook download on your website that generates leads for you or subscribers to your newsletter. And now you've got your ebook and you're an author. And being an author, being the guy with the book, has been great for my career, because people often send an email and say, hey, you got to meet Jay. He's got this digital marketing agency, works with lawyers, and he wrote the book. So you immediately become an expert, and you were an expert in their eyes when they made the recommendation. So now you can have an ebook. And then what you'll find is once you have this book and these blogs, you'll get a bunch of questions, and people will give you that refinement I talked about that I did from the stage with the 10 Golden Rules presentation. And every time I did it, I got better, refined the messaging, made it easier for people to understand this complex digital marketing stuff. So you can then refine that into a book quite easily and build out your chapters and turn it into a book.
I know you have a podcast too, and we were talking about, I think you're on 2 years, so you're a little bit ahead of me, but doing a podcast one every week for 52 weeks, and now for you for 2 years. Talk about how a podcast can really help benefit your brand and the things that you can do with a podcast.
Well, interesting story. I believe I have a world record in podcasting. I have the longest pod fade in history. And I'm going to try and validate this and get a Guinness certification. But I actually did a podcast way back in 2008, 2009 and interviewed some of the famous podcasters in the world. I interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, the famous social media star. And I interviewed Jason Calacanis, who now has the All In podcast, when he was doing a search engine startup, and way back when. And then I pod faded a little bit. I had some technology issues with my computer, and I kept meaning to get back to it. So then I rebooted the podcast. It was originally the 10 Golden Rules Internet Marketing podcast. Now it's the 10 Golden Rules Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. But I went from episode 50 to episode 51, and I just said, well, we've been off the air for a little bit, but welcome back. Just
like nothing happened.
So I think it's a funny story, a sad, funny story. The podcast has been fantastic, and just everyone I meet, I saw you speak on stage. I'm like, oh, I got to get Chris on my podcast. And I go to a lot of conferences, and when I speak at conferences, I participate. I sit in the seats and I take notes and I try and get smarter. I love that fact of it. So I'm at 10 or 12 of the big legal conferences every year, and if anyone has some great new messaging, and the great thing, and you probably discovered it now, about having a podcast is people discover it and then they reach out to you and they want to be on the podcast. So it gets easier and easier to get guests. If you're thinking of doing a podcast, trust me, you're going to work hard for the first 6 months, but then it gets a little bit easier.
Let's talk about YouTube, because I know YouTube's a big thing, and I'm not there yet. We got to do it. We have the podcast obviously on YouTube and watch the podcast live, but there's so much more to do with YouTube. And so kind of talk about the kind of advent of YouTube and how big it is now. And again, not for just lawyers. This is for all business owners out there.
A lot of people don't treat YouTube with the respect it deserves. It's by far and away the number 2 website in the world. By far and away. You got Google and YouTube, and then you got everything else way, way behind it in terms of traffic. And then YouTube is also part of the Google algorithm. So you really want to have a YouTube strategy because it's part of your SEO strategy. And video is so important for so many things, for conversion, for SEO, for the ability now to cut it up into clips and turn it into social media. So you got to have a video strategy and a YouTube strategy. And the numbers are huge on YouTube. And I think they've had a real breakthrough, again, of already being the number 2 website in the world, but they essentially TikToked themselves. In the old days, when you watched YouTube, you would see the people you subscribed to. And TikTok figured out we're going to get more traffic if we show people stuff that they like. So if you watch a whole video on a recipe on how to cook some kind of crazy thing with like graham crackers and chocolate and s'mores, or then they're going to show you more things about how to cook crazy things with graham crackers, and so YouTube's started doing the same thing very clearly. So I mostly see videos about lawyers, marketing, maybe business and EOS and stuff, and the Winnipeg Jets hockey club. Okay, so YouTube knows what I want to see, and they show me that on a regular basis. So guess what? I turn to YouTube all the time now. I always used to, if I had 15 spare minutes waiting in line at a bank or at the gym or whatever, I would always go to podcasts. But now I go to YouTube first, personally. But I believe the numbers are huge. Everybody else is starting to develop that habit, and of course there's TikTokers and Instagrammers and Facebookers. But the YouTube numbers are huge and compelling. And we see that traffic for our clients.
Yeah, it's kind of got to get into that invention of it all. But I know you have another book coming out. So what prompted book number 2? Tell us about book number 2. What to expect?
Well, actually, it's book number 5.
Oh, sorry.
I wrote a great book, and you could steal this one, with my intern, and I had him blog everything he learned. And then each of those became a chapter in his book. So do that for your interns. And we wrote a book called Digital Future in 2018 about predicting AI and artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and Bitcoin and blockchain. But my newest book is called Advanced Internet Marketing for Law Firms. And here's another cheat for folks if you want to steal this one. I basically scheduled out my webinars for a year. And I did pay-per-click for lawyers, SEO for lawyers, LSAs for lawyers, Google Maps for lawyers, and they had slightly more clever marketing titles. But I did a lot of research and worked with my team and developed the content. We put it up on YouTube, and then we wrote each of them up as a chapter. So I'm going through the final edit. The challenge is everything keeps changing. So, the chapter on LSAs, there was 3 LSAs on the desktop and 2 on mobile, and now there's 3 on mobile and 2 on desktop. So we're doing a final round of edits.
I like to kind of get some. You talked about a bunch, but what's one book that everyone should read? And I know you've said a bunch of them already. I actually wrote some of them. I'm thinking of some of them. I'm like, man, I got to read that. I haven't read that one yet. And so you got me on a couple that I'm going to take on my vacation. But
I think my book of the year is Buy Back Your Time.
Love it.
Dan Martell.
Perfect.
Yeah. And there's a line in there that was real freeing for me. And that's 80% done is 100% awesome. And when you buy into the fact, and it's a big part of becoming a leader and becoming a visionary, is you have to hand off a lot of the things you were responsible for. And I know you've had this journey too. And when it's very, very hard to hand off things when you can do it better. But making that mental jump to, okay, it's 80% done. That's 100% awesome. Because maybe I don't have to sit in the HR seat or the marketing seat or the sales seat every day anymore. I can contribute to the team and give them pro tips and stuff and help them move from 80 to 100%, but let them fly with an 80% is pretty darn good.
One thing I talk to everyone about is how they show up best for their team. How do you show up best for your team? How do you show up best in life? So what's your trick to showing up the best version of yourself?
Well, I have to work out every morning or play tennis. And ideally I can play tennis. It's a lot more fun. But, you have to keep a good balance of wellness. And it contributes to everything else. You're in a better mood. You feel like eating better. You have more energy through the day, and you sleep better at night, and then you can get up and get to the gym in the morning. So that's a big part of the wellness. And then I think being a lifelong learner, you've got to keep bringing, especially if you're the visionary, you got to keep bringing the great new ideas to the team. So that's a big part of it, of winning, I think, in that role.
100%. I have to ask you this one question I got. What's the biggest marketing myth that you wish would die?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, let's go specific to personal injury.
Okay.
And a lot of agencies out there are selling the fact that they can get you personal injury cases from Facebook and from Meta. And I believe that's a marketing myth today. You can do branding on Facebook and Meta, but you can't do the kind of, for example, we had a lot of expertise in Meta when we were doing the seminars and events, and we could target people who are into personal development, fans of Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, and those kind of folks would show up gangbusters for a Flip This House because they're into personal development and entrepreneurialism. But for personal injury, God forbid, anybody could get hit driving home tonight, and there's 50% of those people will get hit by someone who has great insurance. So anybody could be in a car accident. Facebook is too expensive because you've got the brands in there, the movies, all the big, retail, e-commerce advertisers. Everybody wants those Facebook eyeballs. It's too expensive if you can't target. It's really, really good if you can target. So for personal injury, you can do branding. You can supplement your branding. Like if you're running TV ads, sure, run Facebook and Meta ads. But don't expect it to have a cost per conversion like Google. Because if you get in a car accident, you're going to go to Google. You're not going to scroll through Facebook hoping there's a personal injury ad.
100%. And then lastly, one thing I always like to ask, and you've done so much in business, what's the legacy that you hope to leave?
Well, I had when I worked at McDonald's, we had a training company come in to modernize the company. The company was 45 years old, and a lot of the guys who had accelerated to management at McDonald's were the best at mopping the floor. And if you were the best at mopping the floor, you could cook the burgers. If you were best at cooking the burgers, you could work the front end, and you became a manager, and you became a district manager. But the old boys approach was, if you didn't mop the floor well, hey, mop that floor. And they had a very gruff environment, even in head office. And, dressing someone down in a meeting was very common. So they brought this group in, and we got these real management experts to train us. And they taught us a lot of things. And one of the things that I learned was to think generationally. And part of your role at the company was to make sure that the people who worked for you and the people who worked for them, you were bringing them along and making them managers so they could take your chair one day. And I think, I'd be proud, and I am proud, to have a generational legacy. And a lot of, now for 23 years, we've probably had 200 or 300 employees at 10 Golden Rules, and many, many of them have gone on to be, major vice presidents at some of the top agencies in the world, some of the top companies in the world. One of them is a senior vice president of a multinational corporation, a VP of marketing right now. So I think generationally we've created a good environment, shared a lot of learning and excitement for marketing, and generationally I believe we've contributed to making the world better.
For those who have listened today and they say, hey, I want the Berkowitz method, what's the way they can get a hold of you?
Well, 10 Golden Rules, TEN Golden Rules is the first place, and Jay Berkowitz on all the social media. And I'm lucky or smart. I always beat the other Jay Berkowitzes to the new social media, and I register it. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jay, for being here today and sharing the 10 Golden Rules with our audience and your story on how you've created this amazing digital marketing agency.
Awesome, Chris. A lot of fun.
Thank you. Jay Berkowitz is proof that if you want to lead in business, you have to be willing to evolve. From the 10 Golden Rules to the ever-changing digital frontier, he's not just teaching the playbook, he's rewriting it in real time. Big thanks to Jay for joining us today. And remember, keep shining your light.